Hey everyone. Today I'm going to talk about believing in a better Earth, better world. Um, Earth, though, is kind of a nice way to think of it, like the planet. We're floating in space. There's this beautiful garden stone floating in infinity, surrounded by alien armadas. I mean, sorry, no, forget that bit. Um, but I think it's something that I've been thinking about more recently because I started, I'm always kind of listening to stuff like podcasts and reading stuff and getting inspired by different veins of thought. And uh, come across this guy, Mark Passio, I'd recommend. It's pretty intense, but really good stuff. And talked about like natural law and, being, basically moral education and stuff and, freedom, ending slavery in the world in the broader sense of these systems of control from governments that are like making life very difficult for people. But basically, I think I've sometimes struggled with like motivation or drive and kind of with depression and things, with being like, why, how to even just take little steps to do stuff when you're aware of so much suffering in the world and so much like disappointment of like, oh, the way the world could be and should be, but is not. And a lot of people don't even know about it, which is very alienating and frustrating when people have their head in the sand and are ignoring what's going on. Um, and so a lot of people kind of come to this thing of like, oh, the world's fucked, pardon my French, you know, um, which I don't think is true. And I don't think, although it could be true, we have to take action. It could happen. But I think it's not helpful and it's actually part of the problem to think like that. And it's not like, it's not cool, it's not smart, it's stupid and dangerous to kind of be like defeatist like that. But anyway, basically, I've been listening to this dude and people like that, and the idea of that we all have an obligation, a moral obligation to try to help improve the world, especially, and this is where we actually have to thank the darkness and evil, is that they're not trying to do this, but the effect of evil of Sauron or Voldemort is that it means you can't just hang out on the couch and just have a blasé existence. It's that you have to go join Aragorn and or Harry Potter or whatever, Luke Skywalker, whatever you want. You have to get it. We all have an ethical obligation, I think, to get involved and to try to fight for the innocent, to protect the innocent, and for a better future. And so I think actually we can do a lot of things in the world, but to make things better. And maybe one of the biggest obstacles, the biggest enemies we have to, maybe the level one boss in this video game we have to conquer, in each of us have to, is this belief that everything is doomed. So if you're in a fight, right, say you're in a boxing match, and you think, oh, this other guy is going to beat me, it's all over. You might put up a bit of a defense, but are you going to win that fight? No way. You have in your head you're not going to probably take the offensive and stuff. You're probably just going to try to wait for the bell or whatever. So if you think you can't do something, it's very hard to actually succeed at that. But I used to have this. So I have the image for this podcast. Also, it's here. I'll take it down from my wall here. I painted this. It's the Earth, and I think it's a very inspiring image, um, planet Earth, beautiful, And I remember being a kid. I guess I was maybe 10 years old or 11 or something. Um, and can I hang it? Yeah, there we go. And thinking of the Earth and like all the problems that were there, and like, oh, will the like thinking like well, it seems so crazy that there's all these problems. There's no way that it makes no sense. Why are we doing these things? Like polluting the world and like, wars and stuff. And I felt like certain, like, no, for sure, the kids are gonna grow up and we're gonna take care of this. But I didn't realize that when you grow up, there's this contamination process where these institutions are intentionally trying to misdirect you. And it's even to some extent just like an automatic kind of self-defense mechanism, although it's also conscious. People trying to dumb down the masses and stuff, elites, dynasties and stuff. But so turns out that actually it's more complicated. But I think that I was actually right. Like it is possible, and we can do it. If you, so I encourage you, if you take one thing away from this podcast before turning it off, like okay, that's enough. 5 minutes is it or something? Um, the image of the earth, keep that in your soul and bring it to mind and think, I'm going to do something for this beauty and for this beautiful world and imagine a better world. And so, I guess what I want to say just before, uh, in this podcast here is that we should be thinking about improving the world. That's not some stupid old-fashioned idea like, oh, everything's relative. It's all your good, my good. It's all subjective. It's like, no, it's there is some object, and this is one thing that Mark Passio guy does puts out, points out very well. There is objective morality. There is objective truth. Um, it's objectively wrong to murder, assault, rape, steal, deceive people, lying to them, coerce people, coercion, or like controlling them, like the Imperiato curse, or whatever in Harry Potter, like Imperio, whatever, Imperious curse, you're controlling them, taking away their basically their soul's liberty, um, and trespass, like going onto someone else's space, violating their right to have their own space, and thus their own even existence. So these seven things, which are actually objectively wrong always. And you can make an argument, oh yeah, but ultimately, there's a brief sidebar into like philosophy, very brief, I promise. 30 seconds max, okay? Hear me out. That you could make the argument, some people do, some very intelligent people get tricked by this, which is, and I was tricked by this. Not saying I'm very intelligent, but I was tricked by it. But into thinking everything's relative, like, or not just that, no, not everything's relative, but ultimately, everything's okay. It's all consciousness. It's the universe dreaming and kind of experiencing these things. So whatever happens will teach us something. And so in ourselves, we should move toward the light and wake up, both because it makes us feel better, but also just because it's the sane thing to do. To understand that love, we're all connected. That's just who we are. And so naturally, love will just blossom. People become more and more aware who they are, and they will stop doing bad stuff. And if people keep doing bad stuff, just point it out to them, tell them, and but sooner or later, if they need more suffering or if they need to commit more suffering in order to progress to where they can wake up, then that has to happen. That's necessary. But but then that's actually justifying evil. So the thing is, yes, everything's ultimately fine. Everything's perfect ultimately, like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle will tell you. Great book. Um, but there's also a balance required in understanding, like, at the same time, we can still stop people raping people or killing people or, destroying their lives. Because on another level, the human level, uh, there's a preference, obviously. So you can say, okay, on this one level, they're equal. Do you stop the crimes or not? Well, it's 50-50. I don't know. But on another level, it's clearly 100% to zero. Like, no, stop it. So, therefore, it's in that balance, and just in your heart, like what if like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings was like, oh, everything's kind of subjective, or ultimately everything's cool. I'll just hang out and I'm gonna just smoke, long bottom leaf. No, you'd be like, well, yeah, I don't respect you. So I think we all have a moral obligation to try to help the world, even if it's in small ways. So so that's one thing, right? So try to think on that. And I think the solution really is just knowing who you are, so self-awareness and being a good person. So don't do any of those seven things. Now, most people aren't likely to be assaulting or murdering and raping and all that, but theft, you might be tempted in small ways to steal. Oh, I'm stealing money from, it's only the government or something, so I'm lying about something to get money. But that's even if they are, essentially gangsters, that's still theft. Two wrongs don't make a right. Um, or there's a danger of polluting your soul there. But deception, I think, is a big one. People deceiving people, not being honest. And there's something I've had to work on where in small ways I realized, oh, I've been dishonest and deceiving. Um, and So, it's a natural thing. The organism wants to control its environment, so we can use warping the truth to get that. Like children do that. Um, and so that's something we can all work on. And when we stop doing bad, that basically we have a right to do anything that's not on that list of seven things. Like if you're not, um, like basically natural law, um, or this kind of framing of it is, you are all beings are free to do whatever they want so long as they're not harming another being. And those are the seven ways you can harm someone. Ultimately, everything seems to derive from one of them. Um, Even like invasion or something would be a form of trespass, apart from murder, mass murder, and theft and that kind of thing. Um, so, um, be free, enjoy your life, do whatever you feel like doing while allowing other people to have that same right. So naturally, we have our spheres of influence. And we need to kind of figure out, oh, whose territory is what, can I smoke next to you? Or we figured out those blurry edge cases, but in general, everything's pretty clear. And there is this objective framework. So that's it. A, believe that we can improve the world. B, understand that you personally have an obligation, whether you want to admit it or not, because it is a work. So it'd be made, and you might think like, oh, this is what I forgot to kind of say before. You might think that that's a bad thing. Oh my God, I can't deal with more pressure. But actually, for me, it's helped me motivate me to do stuff now. I'm like, the fact that the world needs me. All right, get up, get into it, push. And it's all the force of like, oh, the world being so messed up. You can overcome that and regain your mojo through kind of this service, and this ethic of like, I need to be a good person. It's not enough to be a happy person, and you wouldn't really probably succeed at that anyway, if you're not being good. But you have to be a good person. You have to like help people. You have to be a good presence, an uplifting presence. All hands on deck. Anyone who's listening to me, you're already in the minority anyway of people. So if you don't do it, why should anyone else do it? And how likely are they to? And also, if you do it or don't do it, through the ether, like vibrationally and spiritually, we're all connected. So there's a good chance you could make the difference between some really important thing happening or not later. So you have to take these things seriously. We all cannot turn away. We have to, and so all of this comes back to self-honesty, awareness, number one. But then there's this, we can lie to ourselves, which is an amazing ability. And so that's what we have to be very careful about. We have to make sure that we let the information come in and be honest about what we're seeing. Um, and that includes like, okay, I have an obligation. I have to start doing something. I have to think about how I can improve the world. Um, and maybe it's just in small ways, helping out the community, or ideally, if you have the ability to share information and make people aware of this dynamic, like I'm doing right now, you should do that. And even if it makes people uncomfortable or makes you uncomfortable, it makes me uncomfortable sometimes, but you should still do it. We need to wake up more people to realize, the world can improve and life, and it does matter. And that there is such a thing as good and bad and good and evil. And basically it's like love or evil, it's like love and freedom where you let people be free. And that's love. That's an expression of love, this awareness that we're all one, deep down, with branches on the one tree. I'm the branch called Jamie. You're the branch called Trevor. Everyone else, replace Trevor with your own name. Um, but we're on the tree called humanity or life or whatever you want to call it, or Earth. Um, and so and that we can make improvements. We must work towards it in whatever way we can. Um, and basically that essentially involves each of us individually just being a good person. Because if we stop being deceitful, um, then that basically more or less I think fixes everything. Because even things like just taking, yeah, we need courage, we need curiosity, discipline, things like this. We need to care. Um, but all of this kind of flows naturally from not deceiving ourselves. It's like, well, I am aware that I should overcome this fear and just do this thing. It naturally flows. It makes sense. It's the truth. Um, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So then that's all that more or less. Like we can heal this world and we should heal this world, and we should start now and do what we can. Um, and there's a special place in that for anyone who has the ability to kind of express this dynamic and allow people to see, like, oh yeah, to turn other people on to the process. Um, and so then now I'll just finish by saying some things like my ideas for like how we can actually make the world better. What does that mean? What is a better Earth for me? And ultimately, yeah, it comes down to an Earth of freedom where everyone is allowed to be free. Someone who's Randolph Augustus the Fourth, from some uh, mix of German and Japanese aristocracy, and has three citizenships and is a 10% owner of Vanguard or something like that. It's these people who are like basically trying to set up a neo-feudalism. If you've been paying attention, like the way the world's going, there's all these forces where they're creating this layer of bureaucracy which is not elected. So already democratic elections are a bit of a fraud in the West. And it's worse than in countries where the government's a dictatorship, you're on your guard, you know? But in the West, you're like, oh, they work for us. Great. I can chill out. And yeah, I can trust what they're teaching my kids in school. It's like, much more dangerous, actually. Although on some level it's better. We have a bit more freedom, but like I'd say ultimately probably more dangerous. There's more opportunity, but it's probably more dangerous, more likely to get in your head. But anyway, um, uh, so the democratic process, like big money has been able to fund election campaigns for like the politicians, and then over decades and decades and decades, the same dynastic interests who are like were funding the Napoleonic Wars and all this stuff. There's all these presence of capital which has been conserved over hundreds of years, and maybe even thousands of years. Um, but certainly hundreds of years, where this oligarchy, these elements of like banking dynasties and things like this in Europe, which then were controlling Europe and then spread out and stuff. And a lot of that creating the empires, which like people are like, yeah, the imperialism was terrible from Europe, but now we should hate the average European, not these elites who run the UN and stuff. And it's like, well, maybe you're barking up the wrong tree. Because they're still at it. And I think we're all equal. We're all children of God, so I want them to be free too. That's what I was about to say. Actually, this whole thing that these kind of people trying to bring in neo-feudalism, already their money is controlling the politicians who elect choose the judges and the bureaucrats and blah blah blah. So there's this process where, and you can see it in action, where money has been warping the government. So it's just getting more and more and more involved in the economy, which is our way to just our lives in general, but especially the economy, very important. Our ability to provide for ourselves is being so interfered with by the government, by these bureaucracies. And the idea that we can choose is just laughable, at this point. Like, they choose who we can choose. So it's not real. But then even on top of that, if that wasn't bad enough, now there's all these, you know, transnational bodies like the WEF or the UN or, the World Bank or the World Health Organization, etc. And then even within your country, you've got all these lobbyists and NGOs, non-government organizations, but meanwhile they're funded by the government, but they're non-governmental. Ah, okay, sure. And so you've got this process where power has been and decision making is being pulled further and further away from the common man. Um, and do you like how I didn't use the modern version there? It's good. Even if you don't like it, let it stretch your brain a little. You know, um, I mean humans in general, right? Um, so and this basically there are these bureaucracies which are trying to they're violating these laws. So they're murdering, they're killing people in wars and stuff. They're assaulting the police and stuff, beating people up and putting them in a cage for smoking a plant. That's if they're even if they're not hurting anyone. Like if they go and cause and start doing one of those seven things, then you can get them in trouble. But if they're smoking weed, they haven't done one of those seven things yet. So you're the bad guy if you're putting them in a cage for that. Um, and so, they deceive, they lie all the time, right? They trespass, go into your property, go into other people's land, um, or countries even. They coercion, forcing you to pay taxes and do all these things, theft, taxes. They're doing all these things. And so And one more sidebar is like the idea is someone said is like the idea is we don't want these seven things. We don't want, murder and rape, and we don't want, let's say murder, assault, theft, and da, da, da. So okay, our solution is we're going to give the power to do those things to a very small group of humans. We're going to take a small group of humans who are just humans, part of the general population, equally likely to have morality as anyone else. Remember, education does not mean morality. You can be very educated and be a Nazi, you know? They were very educated in general, Nazis, and very intelligent, very calculating. Doesn't mean they're good people. Yeah, there's some good people, but um, uh, so all you're going to take this tiny subsection of society who are equally moral as anyone else, maybe even less moral because they're drawn towards power, and you're going to give them the right to do these terrible things in order to stop people in general doing them. And lo and behold, it doesn't really work very well. So anyway, I think we should have a massive restriction of government. Um, uh, more or less like libertarian, I would say, or um, basically, I think we need to shrink government massively. So it's just the military, police, firefighters, courts, just the very basics. Now, Mark Passio, for example, would say actually you need to go further and go to pure anarchy, but saying that that's been associated with chaos in our head, but actually it's order and government is chaos, like what we've got currently. And he basically says, look, no one has the right to control people and do these things, and if any government's breaking those seven things, like you're forcing people to pay for it and giving them the right to use violence against people and etc. But I think he might be right, but my current point of view is I think realistically we need a transition period to allow human beings to become more aware and more educated, and then when maybe 100 years from now, let's say once we have some sort of peaceful, hopefully, revolution to bring in justice, we get rid of Sauron or Voldemort or whatever, um, and those families and those individuals and institutions who have been trying to control the world, they're, for some of them, there'll have to be justice. Like, okay, you did bad things, you get, some consequence. But in general, I believe in the ancient Irish version of justice, which not punishment, but we could say reconciliation, being able to bring people back into balance where, okay, we're okay with you. Yeah, we're okay with you also. All right. Someone kills someone and their relatives will say, hey, you have to, compensate in order to bring us back into. And if you can do that in a way where they will be okay, we've made peace, then that's okay. Or they're genuinely, their families like, oh, we're really genuinely, horrified by what happened, and we want to give you this and this and this to try and make it okay. Um, so I think basically we need to kind of have a revolution and end this system of slavery essentially in the world where these bureaucracies, and there's many other problems like pollution and terrible things, but the core of it is these slavery systems of like basically governments who are dominating us and taking away people's freedom, and they're not just enforcing. I think, yeah, you can have a government and they can enforce those seven things. You're not allowed to. They've got the military to protect the national property and territory from outsiders, and then they've got the police to protect individuals and their families from other individuals and families trying to trespass and dominate them. Um, and I think temporarily we need that. So revolution and just, but not off with their heads kind of thing, but just like, look, ideally, all these people who are running this system, and it's a pyramid, so the people closer to the top know much more of what's going on and are doing much worse stuff. People more in the middle maybe aren't aware as much. They might even think it's a kind, enlightened thing. Um, but anyway, find a way to make peace so that they can be part of the new world as well. This beauty, they're children of God and they can be redeemed as well. That's a more practical way. It's much more likely to succeed if they will surrender rather than fight to the death, which probably just end up with its all getting destroyed. But also, it's I think the right thing to do. It's the loving thing to do. That in the movie, they can be redeemed. But if they don't want to, if they try and stab you in the back, like Gaston on Beauty and the Beast, he's like, "Go, get out." And then it was his choice to try and stab the beast in the back, and then he ends up falling off the castle to his death by his own choice. But like, you give them the option to come to the light. Um, anyway, so I think basically shrink governments, that'd be a step. And then once that's done, then we can have maybe 100 years or something to process that and kind of heal the trauma, become more educated in general. And then people will reach a level of maturity where we can manage a pure society of no government, no masters, where it's just like, yeah, we can all do whatever we want so long as we're not murdering, assaulting, trespassing, coercing, thieving, etc. Um, but the problem is, if there's some very organized bad people, some psychopath and his very well trained children, um, from basically starting mafias and just taking over areas where people are more timid, then you can have basically government appearing again. Um, in the interim, it may make more sense to have, I would say, like this small scale government. And it's also more likely to be accepted by the general population. But anyway, that's one thing. Shrink and eventually probably, get rid of government as we mature spiritually. But and that would be one thing. Yep. Like, I see a world of like where we balance technology and nature, where we have all this beautiful, shining cities of technology and stuff, but also we have our feet on the ground. We're cool to walk around barefoot outside. We eat natural organic food. We like, we have we make love to our partners in a, beautiful, uplifting way, which, connects us to our true selves, um, and to the power of life. Um, we have, people have children and they enjoy these families and they have authentic, beautiful connections watching each other grow. We heal the forests and, in Ireland, like the native forests are dying because of the actions of the government you know, um, you could read an Irish Atlantic rainforest, if you want, to hear about that. But basically, allowing overgrazing and invasive um, plants to run wild and not creating space for these forests to come back. So healing nature, but and having this kind of balance of like nature and technology, that'd be one thing. And I think basically, yeah, like space, that sounds awesome. Go explore space and stuff. But first of all, there's plenty on the earth. We have to find a way to live on the earth. And I think like when we can bring governments back into line, say if in Europe, let's say the West, right? People can have this kind of revolution, and starting by thinking, yeah, it is possible, even if we can have that and kind of bring things into order, and then all these super intelligent people who've been serving, the Matrix or like the Empire can start serving their own good in balance with everyone else. Then and In general, we can model that. Then I think all around the world, that's going to be like people are going to start demanding that. Like, hey, look what's going over there. That looks much more successful, and it would be or it will be much more successful if that can happen. Um, and then I see a world where it's not a monocultural world and a monoethnic world where everyone's like looks the same and speaks the same and has the same way of thinking, which is also very dangerous, putting all your eggs in one basket for the future of humanity. Um, I think it's basically where people want to mix and stuff, you allow that, but like preserving indigenous cultures as much as possible in Africa, in Asia, in the Americas, in the Pacific, and in Europe, allowing the traditional people to maintain their control of their territory, and because it allows this worldview, this culture, which is unique, to be there with all its music, but especially its way of thinking and what it considers important. Like the Japanese are much more about politeness and discipline and stuff, whereas say in America it's much more like, oh, relaxed and let your kids feel free or whatever. Um, or Ireland, it's much more about like being chatty and like having humor and being humble, whereas maybe in some other cultures that would be considered disrespectful. No, you shouldn't be so open, don't talk about that. um so yeah, I think that would be amazing. I see my vision again. I don't know if this is possible, like if this will happen, but it's a beautiful thing to think about the world you want. Look at that image of in your mind of the earth. Like I can look at my painting here. What do you want it to be exactly? What do you prefer to the current terrible things that are going on with all this destruction of the environment, enslavement of people, absolute, people, soaring rates of anxiety, depression, people who don't know, who they are, um, and yeah, just people in poverty and just feeling like meaninglessness. Um, what do you want? And part of that for me would be this world where we see it's the full colors of the rainbow in all these different nations expressing their dream in their own way. And if in some places for sure things would just morph together naturally over time, and things also separate. One thing which was one nation over time might kind of morph into two different things, but allowing things to kind of flourish naturally, just like with friends. Some friends might come together, form their own little clique within the circle, and but over time they might separate, and there's this give and take, and it's everyone's free to to kind of connect or to say I don't want to hang out right now, and to let the world do that, And I think that the world where we come together as one, paradoxically, will be where we respect our differences and our right to maintain our own traditional ways and to be different if we want. Oh, you don't want to be part of the global order thing. All right, fair enough. Like Angola wants to just be hanging out on their own thing and not be participating in like global governance stuff. All right, fine. But Hungary and Brazil, they're both really keen. They're part of this thing, and they're all like connecting to all this. Let it be. But at the moment, we have is on the individual level and also within the country, a domestic policy, a national policy, and then also around the world these few people trying to control things and not at all respecting people's rights, their freedom, doing these seven crimes against people of murder, assault, rape, theft, deception, coercion, trespass. Was that all of them? Um, but yeah, so that's my thoughts about. I mean, there's many other things I could say, but I'll keep it. I'll leave it there of like how we can make a better Earth. Um, but I think basically it's an Earth of freedom and wisdom um, and balance, where we expect of ourselves and others that we live freely and enjoy ourselves, but never at the expense of other people's freedom to do just the same. And I think we can start doing that. We can start communicating that core truth and how it connects to these bigger issues of government and whatever, um, and start making progress. Because if we don't, I don't think we can just check out. Like, say, I've got children. What are they when they're 60 years old? What's the world going to be like? Or my grandchildren. But even the same, my children, because I can look straight in their eyes right now. I want them to be okay. And then when I see all the other children, the innocent, if you think, yeah, it sounds good, but I don't know, I'm not sure I really feel like doing it. Or you might feel like, yeah, it's okay. I mean, look, everything is like, you know, consciousness and everything's a lesson, and you're just having an ego trip trying to change things because you're projecting and you can't accept the way it is. And you don't understand the balance of light and dark. It's like, no, I understand that these things are natural and healthy and necessary. I also understand that that does not mean there's no logical part of that which says you cannot take action against it to try to change it in a peaceful way, where internally you're calm, but you're like, yeah, we need to change these things. Um, just like, oh, a snake is coming to eat my child. Well, I guess the snake's hungry. I better let it happen. I don't think so. I'll kill the snake and go, God bless, say a prayer, Gak Bannacht, to the spirit of the snake, off you go. I protect my child. That's natural, right? Protected the child's right to be alive. And it's a higher order of consciousness than the snake anyway, so the universe is able to experience more through that anyway. And so on some level, it would have been equal. The snake is consciousness too. But another level, this higher order of consciousness and gets to bloom, my child. And also, I am blooming consciousness through the triumph of love in protecting an innocent being um, from attack. And so the universe blossoms in that very moment also. So, there, think of the children, as I'd say, it's cliche, but like really, like think of the children. If you have children, think of them. If you don't, then look at some children and try to. It's one thing where it's a shame that so many people don't have children, because it basically by having children, it's made me realize, oh, open a whole new level of like, oh, I have to care, you know, and I'm very thankful for that, because basically it filled in a part of my sanity which was a bit missing. I was a bit too focused on, oh, my vibe. I want to express myself and enjoy life. We're all immortal anyway, so let's just enjoy. but it can be a bit hedonistic and a bit narcissistic. It's like you have to think about everyone's right to enjoy, including the children, the innocent, and it really does matter whether children are having all seven of those things on the list happen to them or not. And they are happening en masse around the world to children and also to grown-up children who are now adults. And it's not right and it's not okay. And we have to take action, and we can. And if we fail, well, at least we tried. If Aragorn died and, in the Lord of the Rings or whatever, if the hero doesn't triumph, at least they tried. There is triumph in trying. There we go. All right. God bless everyone. Thanks. See ya.